Nakamichi BX-125. These decks were made in between 1985 and 1987, and it's a two-head deck with a cassette door in the center of the unit, which is not common. Usually the cassette door will be either on the right hand side or more frequently on the left hand side of the unit. While Nakamichi was a premium cassette deck manufacturer, this deck represents the lower scale of that manufacturer, and it fits in between the BX-100 that is almost identical but it has no Dolby C, and a BX-150 that is one step above the BX-125 and has some extra features over the 125, including a digital tape counter. All three were made in the same time period. Let's have a look at the back of the unit. On the back of the unit, it's just a normal unit with here RCA inputs and outputs for the cassette deck. And your power connection, power cord. And this is my latest acquisition as far as cassette decks go. A look inside the cassette well, and it's got Nakamichi's own heads, and the cover has been removed, and there is the infamous idler tire. On the left hand side of the cassette deck, we've got all the buttons to control the cassette deck with fast forward and rewind on top, stop and play next, and pause and record there. And below that is the master fader switch, where you can either fade out or fade in the music while it's recording. There is a power button, and below that is a timer for recording and playback. Below that is a headphone jack. To the right of the cassette well, we have the peak level meters, as well as the rest of the controls for recording, a mechanical tape counter with a memory stop button below, and below that is an auto repeat button. And what that does is, with that engaged, when the tape reaches the end, it will simply rewind the tape and play it again. Recording level sliders, output level knob, MPX filter button here. This top button switches in between Dolby B and Dolby C, and the other button below that either switches them off or on. Tape selectors for type 1, type 2 and type 4 buttons. One pops out when you press the other, so you can't have two engaged at the same time. Below them three is a EQ button and the before mentioned MPX filter button at the bottom. Now let's have a look inside this deck. And prior to me buying this deck had some repairs done because it wouldn't record previously for the previous owner. So he had that repaired before he sold it off, and this is how I got it. A look inside the unit. As far as the cables go, I'm pretty sure this is not how this come out from factory. But like I said, the deck wasn't recording, so it had some work done on it, and that could explain the cables being a bit all over the place. The cassette mechanism itself is described by Nakamichi as custom calibrated cam drive mechanism 3-motor transport. If I'm not mistaken, these 4 chips are Dolby, 2 for Dolby B and 2 for Dolby C, as well as some Nakamichi custom build chips and some NEC chips. Here the 3-motor transport system is a bit better visible. This deck recorded and played fine when I first got it, but later I found out that it's got practically zero torque on the take-up spindle. So I thought it was time to take off the backing plate and have a closer look at the idler tyre, which sure enough was slipping. I wanted to deglaze the idler tyre, and for that I've got a little diamond file, and I'll use that up against the idler tyre as squarely as I can. Luckily you still can buy idler tyres for the Nakamichis, unlike for some other cassette decks, and that is on order, and I'll be replacing it as soon as I can. That piece of paper in the contacts on the right hand side is to make the cassette deck spin, so I can do that. And yes, that has helped a lot. It's got a lot of torque compared to what it had before. Alright, let's try it out. I have some period correct cassettes that this deck was factory calibrated for, a TDK SA and a Fuji FR2 Type 2. In my opinion, the Fuji sounds better. Let's listen to some tunes recorded on this deck on the Fuji FR2. Thank you for watching, and see you next or the previous video.